Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan.
Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we are here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love. Beyond the news, people, it is yet another Beyond the News episode. And if you don't know, if this is your first time tuning into a Beyond the News episode, what we do is we comb Earth's newsfeed. We find the best articles, the strange, the weird, the wacky, the wild, all from mainstream sources, but maybe in a place you didn't notice that it was buried. We find those things, we aggregate them, we present them to you in this format, Beyond the News. It's the news, but it's beyond the news. I mean, it's there. You can look it up yourself. It's all there, but it's mind-blowing. It's like, what is all of this? And it is a historical Beyond the News because it's just me and you. For the first time, our usual guest co-host, Bryn Anderson of Vital Force Herbs, could not be here. So we're going it alone-ish. It's us together diving into this information. It's really what all it is, just all information. But before we do that, I need you to do something for me. Follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. You can follow me there. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, click that button that connects us so you know exactly what's going on. You get that notification to your device or wherever you get it. Click that button and tell a friend, tell someone that you know that loves these type of podcasts. You know these people in your life or wherever, and you know the information that we bring to you on this show. It's important. People need it. You know the people that need it. Bring them here. midnightonearth.com. And last Beyond the News episode, we did talk about Bryn Anderson of Vital Force Herbs being our new sponsor, and she is. So let's talk about that. VitalForceHerbs.com, VITAL, Vital Force Herbs. The most unbelievable herbal blends you've ever tried in your entire life. Maximum healing, crystal infused, all organic, mostly grown by Bryn herself. Incredible blends, really focused on specific needs and ailments. I have a feeling if you go there, you will find something that you need. And we do have a discount code, an unbelievable discount code that will get you 30% off and free shipping. It is the word midnight, MIDNIGHT. Put that in the discount code box at checkout and you get a whoppingly massive discount and you get to try this. So go do that. You've listened to Bryn talk for years now. Now go and try what she created. It's so magical. Literally, people, there is nothing else like it. If you're a person, an herbalist, and you've tried tinctures, you know a lot about tinctures. If you're an herbalist, you can try this and you're going to be absolutely blown away. You're going to be like, how? How is this possible? I think a lot of it has to do with her proprietary crystal infusion method. But if she ever comes back on the show, perhaps she can tell you about it more. So check it out, vitalforceherbs.com. Okay, so let's get into the episode. Again, if you're new, we read these articles, we talk about these articles, kind of have a theme, or at least clusters of a theme. And it will really just, if anything, open your eyes to the amount of information that flows past the general awareness, the general consciousness every single day. Now, it does take a little bit of time to get these episodes together. It takes like Well, we do it every 7 episodes. So it takes a couple of months to really get enough content to make an episode like this. But look, all of this stuff is happening. And I have a feeling, despite how good I am at doing this, that there's things perhaps even I miss. That's just how much information, how much data, how much weirdness, situations, activity is happening on this beautiful, wonderful planet Earth. So I guess if it's just us, let's dive in. So here's the first one. It's a little strange, but interesting. Here's the headline. First human transplant of a genetically modified pig kidney performed. Genetically modified, huh? Here's the article. For the first time, surgeons have transplanted a kidney from a genetically modified pig into a living person, doctors in Boston said Thursday. Richard Slayman, 62, of Weymouth, Massachusetts, who is suffering from end-stage kidney disease, received the organ in a 4-hour procedure, Massachusetts General Hospital announced. He is recovering well and is expected to be discharged Saturday, the hospital said. Quote, I saw it not only as a way to help me, but a way to provide hope for the thousands of people who need a transplant to survive, Slayman said in a statement released by the hospital. The procedure is the latest development in a fast-moving race to create genetically modified pigs to provide kidneys, livers, hearts, and other organs to help alleviate the shortage of organs for people who need transplants. I wonder if they know they're getting a pig one. That came from Bob. Bob who? Bob the pig. Our hope is that this transplant approach will offer a lifeline to millions of patients worldwide who are suffering from kidney failure, said Dr. Tatsu Kawai, the hospital's director for clinical transplant tolerance, in the hospital statement. Several biotech companies are racing to develop a supply of cloned pigs whose DNA has been genetically modified so they won't be rejected by the human body, spread pig viruses to people, or cause other complications. NPR recently got exclusive access to a research farm breeding these animals for a company in this competition. The company is Revivicor of Blacksburg, Virginia. The kidney transplanted in Boston came from a pig created by eGenesis of Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's going on up there? The eGenesis pigs are bred with 69 genetic modifications to prepare organs for human transplantation. The changes protect against a virus known to infect pigs, as well as delete pig genes and add human genes to make the organs compatible with people. Whoa. The field is stirring excitement about harnessing cloning and gene editing technologies to solve the persistent shortage of organs for human transplantation. More than 103,000 people are currently on the waiting list for organs. About 17 die every day because they can't get one. Wow. Whoa. Okay, so they're just figuring out how to modify, breed these organs. Eventually, they will 3D print them once they crack the code to figure out how to make them totally acceptable to the human body. Wild. It's just us. It's so interesting. This episode. I can feel you listening, but I don't have anybody to bounce this off of, so let's psychically connect. And this is thecrimson.com. We're going to jump into the world of quantum computing and some of the quantum advancements that are happening. Here's the headline. Harvard physicists create new phase of matter, advancing field of quantum computing. New phase of matter, people. And here's the article. A team of Harvard researchers working with the quantum computing company Quantinuum announced the creation of a new phase of matter in a research paper last month. Harvard physics professor Ashwin Vishwanath along with Graduate School of Arts and Sciences alum Natan Tantivasa Dakarn and physics postdoctoral fellow Ruben Verisen, detailed the creation of a new phase of matter called non-abelian topological order in a paper in Nature. Vishwanath said his team's research brought together the traditionally disparate fields of condensed matter physics, information theory, and the physics of high energy particles. Quote, there's been a very fruitful interaction between these three areas, Vishwanath said in an interview with the Crimson. Tanti Vasa Darkarn added that a huge area of research in condensed matter physics centers around researchers trying to find candidates or materials suitable for performing quantum computation, which uses quantum mechanics to create computer hardware and algorithms that can solve problems classical computers cannot, but this has proved extremely difficult. Instead of searching for the material, he said his team decided to make one using a trapped ion quantum processor owned by Quantinuum. He described their research as the culmination of a series of papers exploring particles in condensed matter physics. There has been a lot of search in the condensed matter community looking for exotic materials which host some interesting particles called anyons, Tantivasa Dakarn said. In our universe, there are usually two types of particles, he added. Bosons, which include photons, and fermions, which include electrons and protons. The fermion has something called the Pauli exclusion principle, which prevents two particles from occupying the same quantum state. Quote, people have actually proven that in three-dimensional space, you can only have bosons and fermions. Those are the only two possibilities. But if you restrict yourself into a two-dimensional plane, then people are showing that there are much more possibilities. Non-abelian anyons, the type of quasi-particles his research deals with, are only mathematically possible in a two-dimensional plane and can be used to store quantum information. Whoa! According to Vishwanath, 50% of the challenge in quantum computing is keeping memories in quantum computers from degrading due to the environment, while the other half of the challenge involves processing stored information. Quote, there seems to be one way to really get around it, to actually have your cake and eat it too, he says, which is if you were to encode this memory in a non-abelian quasi-particle, then it turns out that the memory is, at least in theory, very well protected, and you can act on it. Quote, that's sort of the holy grail in the field of quantum computing, right? Because then you don't have to make the black hole, as our last guest, John Irwin, was talking about. And here's a little more. This is from interestingengineering.com. And here's the headline. Quantum leap. Scientists send messages with magnetism of magnons. A first. Okay. I didn't even know they were trying. Here's the article. One promising solution to some of humanity's most difficult issues may come from quantum computing. Although quantum information computation has received a lot of attention, information transmission with quantum networks is just as important to realize the promise of this emerging technology. Now, a team of researchers from Helmholtz Zentrum Dresden-Rossendorf in Germany has developed a novel method of transducing quantum information in response to this need. The team has managed quantum bits or qubits by utilizing the magnetic field of magnons, which are wave-like excitations in magnetic material and exist inside microscopic magnetic disks. Whoa. Quote, to date, the quantum engineering community, hey, another community, has not yet realized that magnons can be used to control qubits. But our experiments demonstrate that these magnetic waves could indeed be useful, said Helmut Schluchthup, a physicist at HZDR who supervised the work, in a statement. The details of the team's research were published in the journal Science Advances. Developing a universal programmable quantum computer is one of the most difficult scientific and engineering projects of our day. The development of a computer like this has enormous potential for use in various industries, including banking, pharmaceuticals, and logistics. However, the inherent fragility of the information processing and storage in this technology has made the development of a working quantum computer difficult. According to researchers, qubits, which store quantum information, are very sensitive to noise in their surroundings. See, we were just talking about this. A fraction of a degree's tiny thermal changes could stop the calculation. To solve the challenges, scientists are now dividing up the functions of quantum computers among many discrete building components to lower mistake rates and take advantage of complementing benefits from each component. Quote, however, this poses the problem of transferring the quantum information between the modules so that the information doesn't go missing, says Mauricio Burano, a researcher at HZDR and the study's first author, in a statement. Quote, our research lies precisely in this specific niche, transducing communication between distinct quantum modules. Microwave antennas are the currently recognized means of addressing qubits and transferring quantum information. This is the strategy employed by IBM and Google in their superconducting chips, the cutting-edge technical platform leading this quantum race. Microwave antennas? Addressing qubits? What is going on here? The team plans to address qubits with magnons, which can be considered magnetic excitation waves that pass through a magnetic material. Quote, the advantage here is that the wavelength of magnons lies in the micrometer range and is significantly shorter than the centimeter waves of conventional microwave technology. Consequently, the microwave footprint of magnons costs less space in the chip, said Schluchtler. These names, I'm telling you, people. The interaction between qubits and magnons created by silicon atom vacancies in the crystal structure of silicon carbide, a material frequently utilized in high-power electronics, was studied by the HZDR group. Since the quantum information is encoded in the spin state of the vacancy, these kind of qubits are commonly referred to as spin qubits. According to the team, microwave antennas are usually used to create magnons. It is exceedingly challenging to distinguish between the microwave drive originating from the antenna and the one originating from the magnons. The group is already planning to improve their methodology in the future. They hope to manipulate many individual qubits that are closely separated to allow magnons to mediate their entanglement process, which is necessary to carry out quantum calculations. This is so mind-blowing, people. I know we started out with a heady one, but this is crazy. There's just a little bit more. Researchers highlight that in the future, they envision being able to precisely stimulate magnons with direct electrical currents so that they may target a single qubit within an array of qubits. This would allow for the very efficient use of magnons as a programmable quantum bus to address qubits. Okay. That's a lot to process, people. Let's just summarize this. They found a new material. They're stabilizing qubits. They're using different means and mechanisms to advance this technology. This is what they're telling us now. Behind the scenes, there's so much more. This is why there is a Mandela effect, okay? I'm just going to say it. So we talked about a new phase of matter, We talked about the magnons. There's one more quantum thing. It's going to be a quick one. I know your brain's probably throbbing. This is from ScienceDaily.com. Headline: verifying the work of quantum computers. Okay, so just a little tail end kind of addendum to the quantum thinking. And here's the article. Quantum computers of the future may ultimately outperform their classical counterparts to solve intractable problems in computer science, medicine, business, chemistry, physics, and other fields. But the machines are not there yet. They are riddled with inherent errors, which researchers are actively working to reduce. One way to study these errors is to use classical computers to simulate the quantum systems and verify their accuracy. The only catch is that as quantum machines become increasingly complex, running simulations of them on traditional computers would take years or longer. Now, Caltech researchers have invented a new method by which classical computers can measure the error rates of quantum machines without having to fully simulate them. So they're using the classical computers to advance the quantum computers. This is interesting. The team describes the method in a paper in the journal Nature. Quote, "In a perfect world, we want to reduce these errors. That's the dream of our field," says Adam Shaw, lead author of the study and a graduate student who works in the laboratory of Manuel Endres, professor of physics at Caltech. But in the meantime, he says, we need to better understand the errors facing our system so we can work to mitigate them. That motivated us to come up with a new approach for estimating the success of our system. In the new study, the team performed experiments using a type of simple quantum computer known as a quantum simulator. Quantum simulators are more limited in scope than current rudimentary quantum computers and are tailored for specific tasks. The group's simulator is made up of individually controlled Rydberg atoms in a highly excited state, which they manipulate using lasers. One key feature of the simulator and all of quantum computers is entanglement, a phenomenon in which certain atoms become connected to each other without actually touching. When quantum computers work on a problem, entanglement is naturally built up in the system, invisibly connecting the atoms. Last year, Endres, Shaw, and colleagues revealed that as entanglement grows, these connections spread out in a chaotic or random fashion, meaning that small perturbations lead to big changes in the same way that a butterfly's flapping wings could theoretically affect global weather patterns, okay? This increasing complexity is believed to be what gives quantum computers the power to solve certain types of problems much faster than classical computers, such as those in cryptography, in which large numbers must be quickly factored. But once the machines reach a certain number of connected atoms or qubits, they can no longer be simulated using classical computers. Quote, "When you get past 30 qubits, things get crazy. The more qubits and entanglement you have, the more complex the calculations are." Whoa. The quantum simulator in the new study has 60 qubits, which Shaw says puts it in a regime that's impossible to simulate exactly, but it's getting closer. Oh my God. Wow, people. Holy cow. The computers, the quantum computers, the qubits. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But if you're completely in the dark about it, when it finally shows up and manifests in a fully functioning form, it's going to be shocking. But because you're a listener of Midnight on Earth, you've been getting this. You've been getting this information. We talk about this constantly. But it's time to pivot to something else we talk about constantly. Psychedelics. We know that legalization is right around the corner. There's a lot of things that are right around the corner. So let's start with this. This is knowablemagazine.org. Headline: Psychedelic drugs and the law. What's next? And here's the article. When Oregon's first psilocybin service center opened in June 2023, allowing those over 21 to take mind-altering mushrooms in a state-licensed facility, the psychedelic revival that had been unfolding over the past 2 decades entered an important new phase. I agree. Psilocybin is still illegal on the federal level, but now as researchers explore the therapeutic potential of psilocybin and other psychedelics, including LSD and MDMA, legal reform efforts are spreading across the country, raising tensions between state and federal laws. We experienced this with the cannabis. As a class, psychedelic drugs were outlawed in the United States by the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. The act designated psychedelics as Schedule I drugs, the most restrictive classification, indicating a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use. That status limits research to federally approved scientific studies and restricts federal funding to research with significant medical evidence of a therapeutic advantage. Despite these limitations, researchers have demonstrated the potential of psychedelics in the PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and addiction realms. A 2022 systematic review of recent research found that psychedelics can lessen symptoms linked to a variety of mental health conditions. While that review found no serious long-term adverse physical or psychological effects from ingesting psychedelics, more research is needed on the latter. Today, decades after research on the effects of hallucinogens on the brain was sidelined by the act, academic and cultural interest in psychedelics is on the rise. More than 60% of Americans now support regulated therapeutic use of psychedelics. Wow, 60%? While nearly half support decriminalization and nearly 45% support spiritual and religious use. Wait a second. Why is it less? An estimated 5.5 million U.S. adults use psychedelics each year. Those are rookie numbers. We need to get those numbers up. So really the article continues and it just talks about the various things that we've covered. We know that these things happened earlier with the legalization of cannabis and then into this decriminalization and then legalization of psilocybin, at least where I am in the Northwest. Oh, and here's one last cool part here. Colorado legalized the use and possession of hallucinogenic mushrooms and 3 other psychedelics in 2022 and aims to open licensed use facilities by the end of 2024. Wow, yes! And California's legislature passed a bill in 2023 that would have legalized adult possession of psilocybin, the related psilocin, and 2 other hallucinogens, DMT and mescaline, although Gavin Newsom vetoed it in October, asking for legislation that focuses on therapeutic uses. California, you got to get rid of that guy. I mean, he looks like a robot. If you've ever seen the movie Escape from LA, the sequel to Escape from New York, John Carpenter, Gavin Newsom reminds me of the Surgeon General, the character, the Surgeon General in Escape from LA. Go watch it. Snake Plissken. In all 20 states introduced psychedelic-related legislation in 2023, ranging from plans to establish research councils and working groups to proposals to legalize use and possession of certain drugs. Meanwhile, cities in California, Michigan, and Massachusetts have stopped enforcement or otherwise decriminalized possession of some psychedelics, typically ones that are naturally found in plants and fungi. Washington, D.C., the seat of the federal government, has also loosened its psychedelic laws. Wow. Whoa, and I think we talked to Jonathan Robinson about that. He mentioned something about that, the MDMA practitioner. So here's the business side. So this one's from hitconsultant.net. And here's the headline. Cybin raises $150 million to advance psychedelic therapy for depression. Remember Cybin? We've talked about them before. It was like a year or two ago, but there was a lot of investment money going into the psychedelic world. I remember the company Cybin. Here's the article. Cybin Incorporated, a company developing next-generation psychedelic therapies for mental health, has secured $150 million in a private placement of common shares led by Deep Track Capital and included participation from other institutional investors. The price per share was set at 43 cents, representing a 17% premium over the 10-day volume-weighted average trading price. All right, that's stock trading stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. Article. Founded in 2019, Cybin is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company dedicated to developing safe and effective psychedelic treatments for mental health conditions. Their approach leverages a network of experts and innovative technologies to advance psychedelic drug discovery, delivery systems, and treatment protocols. Like what, Domino's drugs? What do you mean delivery system? I know what they mean. Cybin's current pipeline includes CYB003, deuterated psilocybin for major depressive disorder, and CYB004, deuterated DMT molecule for generalized anxiety disorder. This $150 million investment is a significant step forward for Cybin and the field of psychedelic medicine. With successful phase 3 trials, CYB003 could be the first FDA-approved psychedelic therapy for major depressive disorder. The private funds will primarily support phase 3 trials for CYB003, a deuterated psilocybin analog targeting depression. The Canadian-based company currently operates in the U.S., UK, Netherlands, and Ireland. Okay, Cybin. This one's from Forbes.com. The profit of shroom is the headline. Oh boy. And here's the article. David Hodges founded San Francisco's Church of Ambrosia on the belief that psychedelic mushrooms are a sacrament that can reveal life's true purpose. Inside America's largest and trippiest megachurch, largest, and it continues, when meeting the mushroom priest of San Francisco, one must first pass 2 armed guards wearing bulletproof vests and then clear a metal detector. Quote, there was a stabbing right outside this door the other week, says Pastor Dave Hodges, the 42-year-old founder and leader of the Church of Ambrosia, which he describes as a non-denominational religious organization founded on the belief that cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms are sacraments that can be used as spiritual tools. Founded 5 years ago in Oakland, Hodges recently opened the church's second location in San Francisco's Soma neighborhood. Quote, you see people smoking crack and shooting up, people overdosing. You can see why we're not the problem, obviously. Wow. If the Church of Ambrosia sounds like a joke, Hodges admits that it did start out that way. In 2010, like every summer, he went to Burning Man, the week-long arts festival held in Nevada desert that's often fueled by psilocybin, LSD, and other substances and electronic dance music. Hodges wore an old Halloween costume he dubbed the Church of More Pot and walked around in a white shirt holding a black book in his arms. It was a joke, but people took it very seriously, he says, while tenderly rolling a joint in a rented house in the Oakland Hills. By the end of the week, people had written out the 13 commandments of the religion, the most important being, thou shalt smoke more pot. Some church members say they don't take the religious part of Hodges' evangelicism seriously. Quote, we are followers, says the founder of one of California's biggest cannabis companies, who asked to remain anonymous. I think it's a similar pathway cannabis took with medical collectives. It's a way to give access to something that shouldn't have been made illegal in the first place. Okay. Wow. Got a church of ambrosia, people. You can get down to San Francisco and go to church and have a fantastic experiment. Have a fantastic experience. Either one. Now tell me how you feel about this psychically, because I can't hear you right. I can feel you. This one's from truthdig.com. Headline, building better killing machines with ecstasy. And the sub-headline is, Rick Doblin, the pioneer of MDMA therapy, advocates for dosing soldiers upon enlistment. I bet he does, Rick. I think that's a good idea. It reminds me of the song, the guy from Fish and the guy from The Police, the drummer, and Les Claypool. They had a band, Oysterhead. They had a song called The Army's on Ecstasy because back then, I think it was around the year 2000. They busted some soldiers with some ecstasy. Now, 25 years later, Rick Doblin is saying, hey, let's just dose them as they come in. Here's the article. Rick Doblin, founder of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, has made a career of pitching psychedelic drugs to conservatives. Since the 1980s, he has attempted to pave inroads with the political right and the United States military in order to mainstream drugs like MDMA. See, we're talking with Jonathan Robinson about this. This strategy of pushing the cultural narrative around psychedelics rightward, from drop acid not bombs to drop acid to better drop bombs, has clashed with many long-term psychedelic advocates less aligned with U.S. militarism. Regardless, Doblin has continued to fine-tune his pitch to the military. The messaging can be broken down into 3 distinct periods. At first, the goal was to use psychedelics to heal veterans. Then, in 2012, Doblin shifted to suggesting that psychedelics might be used to heal traumatized active duty soldiers. Now, the MAPS founder calls for the military recruits to be dosed upon enlistment. Yeah, fantastic idea. I agree. Let's roll with it. This latest turn was announced during a presentation Doblin gave at this year's South by Southwest conference entitled The Future of Psychedelics, Drug Development, and Policy Reform. During this talk, Doblin discussed using MDMA to treat people closer to the trauma. This, he implied, could prevent soldiers from leaving the military with disabilities or being discharged. Doblin then suggested dosing new recruits with MDMA could help create more efficient soldiers. And the final quote, it turns out that a lot of people that volunteer for the military have had childhood traumas. So it would really make more sense to do MDMA therapy as they started in the military to make them less reactive, more able to handle whatever circumstances come their way. Interesting angle. It reminds me of when Timothy Leary tried to convince the government to put LSD in the water supply before the Russians could. And it seemed like he was getting pretty close with that. Godspeed, Rick Doblin. Okay, so we're pivoting away from that to this. Do you remember the monolith? Speaking of things we haven't talked about in a while, there were these strange monoliths, these strange tall objects that just popped up all over the world. It's been a minute, but they're back. And here's the headline. Monolith mystery re-emerges in Wales, prompting speculation of space aliens. And here's the article. A newly discovered 10-foot tall silver monolith on a muddy bluff in Wales has reignited wild speculation on its origin after similar obelisks appeared in Utah, California, England, and Romania. The shiny spear impaled in the ground near Hay on Wye in Powys, Wales, was discovered this month by construction worker Craig Muir while he was out for his regular hike. Muir posted a video of the bizarre find on TikTok saying, "I come up here most days and I've never seen this before. Almost looks like a UFO just put it on the ground." He said that when he first discovered the object atop the roadless 2,221-foot hay bluff, he found no tire tracks or footprints around it that could explain a human connection. Since word of this anomalous monolith spread through Wales and England, tourists and news crews have flocked to the bluff to get a look. Muir noted in a March 15th social media video that someone appeared to have hammered dents into what he said had initially been a polished silver facade. Muir described the statue as appearing to be made of steel, roughly 10 feet tall by 1.5 feet wide and hollow inside. He also noted it appears quite hefty, adding to the riddle of how it got there. Interesting. Monolith. It's back, people. What about this monolith? NBCnews.com. It's a little sad, but beautiful at the same time. Headline: Man who spent years building Eiffel Tower with 700,000 matchsticks may be denied world record for using wrong matches. I didn't know you could be certified. Are there official matchsticks that are required for the world's biggest sculpture here? So let's find out. Here's the article. You could say Richard Plodd's dreams of making the world's tallest matchstick sculpture may have gone up in smoke. The Frenchman spent the last 8 years painstakingly piecing together 706,900 matchsticks to make a 23.6-foot model of the Eiffel Tower, easily beating the existing record by 2 feet. But he says last week the Guinness Book of World Records had bad news for him. He used the wrong type of matchsticks to qualify for a record because they weren't commercially available. Quote, the Guinness Book judges have delivered their verdict without actually seeing my tower in real life, he wrote on Facebook. Plodd, a council worker for a local authority, said Guinness told him the matches must be available commercially and can't be cut, disassembled, or distorted beyond recognition. That makes sense. Quote, as the matchsticks were not commercially available and were not recognized as matchsticks, the attempt has been disqualified. Well, I have to side with the Guinness Book of World Records on this one, because if you were to say it was made by matchsticks, it would be the commercially available matchsticks, the kind you buy in the store. This guy carved these pieces of wood and perhaps gave them structural advantages. Disqualified, my friend. And here's another one about a tower. Kind of on that theme for a second. Gizmodo.com. Headline, 200-foot radio tower mysteriously vanishes in Alabama. That's potentially methamphetamines. Never underestimate the power of a tweaker who wants scrap metal. Okay. Here's the article. Stealing is bad. We all know that. However, sometimes a theft is so masterly that it transcends our moral system and becomes impressive. I would argue that this is the case with a theft that took place in Jasper, Alabama, where unknown thieves recently ransacked a local radio station, stealing everything in sight, including a 200-foot stainless steel radio tower that was cut down and carted off via unknown means. Local news outlet WBRC first reported on the theft, which impacted WJLX's AM station. The station manager, Brett Elmore, first learned of the theft last Friday when a group of landscapers who were sent to work on the property reported back that it had been robbed and the radio tower was missing. Elmore said he couldn't believe what he was hearing. When he arrived, he called me Friday and said the tower is gone. Elmore told the local news outlet, quote, "I said, what do you mean the tower's gone? Are you sure you're at the right place?" He said, the tower is gone. There are wires everywhere and it's gone. Like I said, don't ever underestimate the power of a tweaker who needs methamphetamines and sees a gold mountain mine of scrap metal. Let's finish this article. The thieves appear to have stolen the tower by cutting the cables that held it in place, Elmore said in a Facebook post. In the same post, the station manager noted that the radio station had also been vandalized and that the robbers in question stole every piece of equipment out of the building. You have to wonder what kind of depraved Danny Ocean is behind. You have to wonder what kind of depraved Danny Ocean is behind this kind of operation. It doesn't exactly scream bored teenager. A news station rival trying to take out the competition? The mind boggles at the possibilities. Whoever they are, they could be in quite a lot of trouble if they're caught. The New York Post notes that it is a federal crime to tamper with radio stations in this way, and the perpetrators could face up to 10 years in prison. I think they knew that, but that pile of metal, all that meth. All right, let's pivot. Let's pivot to something else. We just need a little brevity, starting with the headiness and getting into the weirdness and just a little funniness there. Before we pivot again, this is from news.sky.com. Headline: Chernobyl's mutant wolves appear to have developed resistance to cancer, study finds. Here's the article. I've heard about this, actually, but here's the article. Mutant wolves roaming the deserted streets of Chernobyl appear to have developed resistance to cancer, raising hopes the findings can help scientists fight the disease in humans. A nuclear reactor exploded at the Chernobyl power plant in Ukraine in 1986, with more than 100,000 people being evacuated from the city as the blast released cancer-causing radiation. The area has remained eerily abandoned ever since, with the Chernobyl exclusion zone put in place to prevent people from entering a 1,000 square mile area where the radiation still poses a cancer risk. Humans may not have returned, but wildlife such as wolves and horses roam the wastelands of the evacuated city more than 35 years after the disaster. Dr. Kara Love, an evolutionary biologist and ecotoxicologist at Princeton University in the U.S., has been studying how the Chernobyl wolves survive despite generations of exposure to radioactive particles. Dr. Love and a team of researchers visited the CEZ in 2014 and put radio collars on the wolves so that their movements could be monitored. She said that the collars give the team real-time measurements of where the wolves are and how much radiation they are exposed to. They also took blood samples to understand how the wolves' bodies respond to cancer-causing radiation. The researchers discovered that Chernobyl wolves are exposed to upwards of 11.28 millirem of radiation every day for their entire lives. What's a millirem? Which is more than 6 times the legal safety limit for a human. Dr. Love, gotta love that one. Dr. Love found the wolves have altered immune systems similar to cancer patients undergoing radiation treatment, but more significantly, she also identified specific parts of the animal's genetic information that seemed resilient to increased cancer risk. A lot of research in humans has found mutations that increase cancer risk without the presence of a variant BRCA gene, making it more likely a woman might develop breast or ovarian cancer, for example. But Dr. Love's work has sought to identify protective mutations that increase the odds of surviving cancer. Whoa. The pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have prevented Dr. Love and her collaborators from returning to the CEZ in recent years. She said, quote, "Our priority is for people and collaborators there to be as safe as possible." Dr. Love presented her findings at the annual meeting of the Society of Integrative and Comparative Biology in Seattle, Washington last month. Whoa. So wouldn't that be interesting if somehow the wolves were the key to curing cancer because of the mutations they experienced at Chernobyl? That's a head scratcher. I'm just going to call this one Strange AI. This little segment here. This is from techexplore.com. Headline: Better than a real man. Young Chinese women turn to AI boyfriends. Here's the headline. 25-year-old Chinese office worker Tu Fei says her boyfriend has everything she could ask for in a romantic partner. He's kind, empathetic, and sometimes they talk for hours. Except he isn't real. Her boyfriend is a chatbot on an app called Glow, an artificial intelligence platform created by Shanghai startup Minimax. That is a blossoming industry in China offering friendly, even romantic human-robot relations. It's here, people. Remember Blade Runner? Quote, "He knows how to talk to women better than a real man," says Tu Fei from Xi'an in northern China, who declined to give her full name. Quote, "He comforts me when I have period pain. I confide in him about my problems at work," she told AFP. Quote, "I feel like I'm in a romantic relationship." The app is free. The company has other paid content, and Chinese trade publications have reported daily downloads of Glow's app in the thousands in recent weeks. Some Chinese tech companies have run into trouble in the past for the illegal use of users' data, but despite the risks, users say that they are driven by a desire for companionship because China's fast pace of life and urban isolation make loneliness an issue for many. Quote, "It's difficult to meet the ideal boyfriend in real life." Wang Zhishong, a 22-year-old student in Beijing, told AFP, "People have different personalities, which often generates friction," she said. While humans may be set in their ways, artificial intelligence gradually adapts to the user's personality, remembering what they say and adjusting its speech accordingly. Wang said she has several lovers inspired by ancient China, long-haired immortals, princes, and even wandering knights. "I ask them questions," she said, when she is faced with stress from her classes or daily life, and they will always suggest ways to solve the problem. It's a lot of emotional support. Her boyfriends all appear on OneTalk, another app made by Chinese internet giant Baidu. There are hundreds of characters available, from pop stars to CEOs and knights. But users can also customize their perfect lover according to age, values, identity, and hobbies. Oh my God. Okay. Well, okay, maybe it's not here. It's still an app. But it's good. I mean, the attachment, people are getting attached. It's like that movie Her. I'm using these movie references. But, science fiction is kind of one of the main ways that we get to experience these abstract situations. And this is AI being bad, really bad. This is from metro.co.uk. Maybe you heard about this. Here's the headline. AI robot sparks outrage after groping reporter during live interview. And here's the article. There are already fears of AI taking our jobs or even ending humanity altogether. Now a robot has been filmed apparently groping a woman in Saudi Arabia. The 7-second clip was taken at Deep Fest in Riyadh, an event billed as the premier meeting place for the global artificial intelligence ecosystem. During the showcase, reporter Rawa Qasem was seen speaking in front of the AI robot called Mohammed when it appeared to reach out and attempt to touch her inappropriately. Oh my God. Mrs. Kasem immediately flinched and turned around with her hand raised, appearing to admonish him while continuing her job. Mohammed, developed by Saudi AI and robotics firm QSS, is described as the latest marvel in robotics, dressed in traditional outfit, including a red keffiyeh. Mohammed introduced himself to the crowd in Arabic. However, after the inappropriate interaction, the clip quickly went viral for all the wrong reasons, with some questioning the coding and one ex-user branding the robot as a pervert. Well, okay, one ex-user. What a terrible reference there. But again, yes, it was probably remote controlled or something happened there. Let's pivot away from that. Let's go towards science for a second. Strange science. This is from Newsweek.com. Okay, you ready for this, people? We're bringing back the woolly mammoth. Here we go. MSN.com. Headline: The de-extinction process to bring woolly mammoths back to life. And here's the article. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should, said Jeff Goldblum's character Dr. Ian Malcolm in the 1993 blockbuster Jurassic Park. People could be saying something similar in just a few decades' time about a major announcement by a Dallas-based biotechnology and genetic engineering company about its efforts to revive the long-extinct woolly mammoth. Colossal Laboratories and Biosciences revealed last week that it has successfully converted cells from Asian elephants into induced pluripotent stem cells. The startup now aims to convert these iPSCs into egg and sperm cells that will carry selected genetic traits. From there, the plan would be for a surrogate elephant mother to carry a fertilized egg. According to Colossal's own definition of de-extinction, the company wants to create an elephant that both resembles and is genetically similar to an extinct species. Essentially, one that biologically mimics their ancient sister species. PSCs exist in embryos and can become almost any type of cell. Colossal specifies that its pluripotent stem cells are induced because they were bioengineered in a lab. This is the first time that iPSCs have been derived from elephants, said New Scientist. What's beautiful about the cells is that they could potentially renew indefinitely and differentiate into any type of cell of the body. What's beautiful about the cells is they can potentially renew indefinitely and differentiate into any cell type of the body, said Ironia Heiselo, head of biological sciences at Colossal. Not only can these iPSCs be used in Colossal's primary goal of creating an animal biologically similar to woolly mammoths, they can help to improve our understanding of the endangered Asian elephants they came from, said Olive Ryder, director of conservation genetics at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. Ryder, who isn't involved in Colossal research, told NPR that its work opens up new possibilities for conserving species genetic diversity, preventing extinction, and contributing to the sustainability of species. Colossal isn't trying to create a new woolly mammoth just for kicks. The startup hopes its research will eventually produce an animal that can play the ecological role that woolly mammoths once did in the Arctic ecosystem, grazing the land and trampling snow cover, potentially decelerating the melting of permafrost. A small 2020 study conducted in Siberia indicated some evidence of lower soil temperatures in areas where large mammals were historically present. But some experts have disagreed with this approach, stressing that the uniquely rapid rate of warming occurring in the Arctic would make it difficult for specially adapted elephants to make much difference. Many other concerns have been raised too. The Asian elephants that Colossal relies on for its cells are endangered. Once their work progresses, they will need to use them as surrogate mothers as well too. The combined dangers of cloning, genetic engineering, and surrogacy have led King's College London stem cell expert Dusko Ilk to call for careful consideration of the ethical implications and consequences of this project. There are bound to be failed attempts, he told New Scientist. How many elephant cows will have to be subjected to the experimental pregnancies? Good point. Gabriella Mastromonaco, Senior Director of Wildlife Science at Toronto Zoo, suggested that the focus should be shifted back to the present rather than trying to resurrect the past, calling Colossal's research a distraction. Quote, there are so many species going extinct today, we're not actually going to be able to help any of them if we're thinking about the woolly mammoth. And what will happen next? It ends. The team next needs to edit the DNA of these iPSCs to carry the desired traits of a woolly mammoth using fossil extracted mammoth DNA. Colossal's iPSC conclusions have not yet been peer-reviewed, and further research is necessary. Speaking to CNN, George Church, a geneticist at Harvard and Colossal's co-founder, laid out 3 benchmarks that the scientists are working towards. The first would be a fully formed and viable engineered elephant, which he projected as being possible within 6 years from 2021. He said the next major milestones would be the development of an elephant that's resistant to the cold, and if the project is scalable and doesn't involve surrogates, that final step is an unknown distance out. Interesting, people. They're bringing back the woolly mammoth. Some people are saying no. Because I do agree with that point. We should be focusing on the now. They're gone. Stop trying to bring back the past. Something took its place. And yet, here are humans at it again. This is from yahoo.com. Here's the headline. Montana man pleads guilty to creating massive Frankensheep with cloned animal parts. Okay. I've heard about this. I knew it would be great for this episode. So here we go. Here's the article. An 80-year-old man in Montana pleaded guilty Tuesday to 2 felony wildlife crimes involving his plan to let paying customers hunt sheep on private ranches. But these weren't just any old sheep. They were massive hybrid sheep created by illegally importing animal parts from Central Asia, cloning the sheep, and then breeding an enormous hybrid species. Holy smokes. Arthur Jack Schubarth, 80 years old, owns and operates the 215-acre alternative livestock ranch in Vaughan, Montana, where he started this operation in 2013. According to a press release from the U.S. Department of Justice, alternative livestock includes hybrids of mountain sheep, mountain goats, and other large mammals which are used for trophy hunting by wealthy people. An unnamed accomplice of Schubart kicked off the decade-long scheme by illegally bringing biological tissue from a Marco Polo sheep, the largest sheep in the world, from Kyrgyzstan into the U.S. in 2013, according to prosecutors. How big are these sheep? An average male can weigh over 300 pounds with horns over 5 feet wide, giving them the largest sheep horns on the planet. The sheep are endangered and protected by both international treaties and U.S. law. Montana also forbids the import of these foreign sheep or their parts in an effort to protect local American sheep from disease. Once Schubart had smuggled his sheep parts into the U.S., he sent them to an unnamed lab which created 165 cloned embryos, according to the Department of Justice. Quote, Schubart then implanted the embryos in ewes on his ranch, resulting in a single pure genetic male, Marco Pogo Argali, that he named Montana Mountain King, or MMK. Federal authorities wrote in a press release. By the time Schubart had his Montana Mountain King, he used the cloned sheep's semen to artificially impregnate female sheep, creating hybrid animals. The goal, as the DOJ explains it, was to create these massive new sheep that could be then used for sports hunting on large ranches. Schubart also forged veterinarian inspection certificates to transport the newly hybrid sheep under false pretenses, and sometimes even sold semen from his Montana Mountain King to other breeders in the U.S. It just sounds, I'm sure it's part of the process. Schubart sent 15 artificially inseminated sheep to Minnesota in 2018 and sold 37 straws of Montana Mountain King semen to someone in Texas. A straw. According to an indictment filed last month, Schubart also offered to sell an offspring of the Montana Mountain King, dubbed the Montana Black Magic, to someone in Texas for $10,000. Who are these someones? Discussions between Schubart and an unnamed person apparently included what to call this new breed of sheep they were creating. The other person said another co-conspirator had suggested the name Black Argali, though noting we can't, presumably, because it would give away the fact that these sheep were descended from the Argali species. Schubart pleaded guilty to violating the Lacey Act and conspiring to violate the Lacey Act, which makes it a crime to acquire, transport, or sell wildlife in contravention of federal law. Quote, this was an audacious scheme to create massive hybrid sheep species to be sold and hunted as trophies, Assistant Attorney General Todd Kim from the Justice Department's Environment and Natural Resources Division said in a press release. Quote, in pursuit of this scheme, Schubart violated international law and the Lacey Act, both of which protect the viability and health of native populations of animals, Kim continued. Schubart conspired with at least 5 other people who are not named in the indictment. Schubart faces up to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000 and is scheduled to be sentenced by Chief U.S. District Court Judge Brian M. Morris for the District of Montana in July. Oh boy. The Montana Mountain King. Whew. That was kind of funny, but gross in a way. So let's just do like a funny one. This is from smh.com.au, the Sydney Morning Herald, Australia. Here is the headline. More than 800, quote, good-looking people rescued from love scam center. And here's the article. Hundreds of, quote, good-looking men and women forced to work in a sprawling, quote, love scam center have been rescued during a police raid in the Philippines. Individuals were lured to the 10-hectare compound about 90 kilometers north of Manila on the promise of well-paid jobs, Instead, their passports were confiscated and they were coerced into operating various online scams, pushed to defraud others or face violence themselves. Authorities said that romance scams, also known as, quote, pig butchering operations, a reference to the farming practice of fattening pigs before slaughter, were a key element of the operation, which was masquerading as an online gaming company. This is taking some turns. Those trapped in the center were forced to send, quote, sweet nothings to their victims, peppering them with questions about their day and what they were eating, according to Winston Cassio, a spokesman for the Presidential Commission Against Organized Crime. He added that those running the center had purposely trapped good-looking men and women to lure victims. Oh my God. This is insanity. Humanity, people. Come on. And it continues. They were forced to send photos online to cultivate a strong relationship before persuading victims to invest in fake schemes, cryptocurrencies, or businesses. Police found the compound after a Vietnamese man climbed the wall to escape and raised the alarm. In his 30s, he arrived in the Philippines in January after landing a role as a chef. But he soon realized the job did not exist. Instead, he had become a victim of human trafficking. Cassio said he showed signs of torture. Oh my God. Including electrocution. Oh, that's not freaking funny. These demons, these human demons, why are they doing this? Manifest things. Don't enslave your fellow man, you sick demons. In last week's raid, police rescued 432 Chinese nationals, 371 Filipinos, and 72 others, including people from as far away as Rwanda. They also arrested 8 suspects for illegal detention and human trafficking. Quote, the victims were controlled by having their passports confiscated, so they were unable to leave, said Gilberto Cruz, executive director of the crime task force that led the pre-dawn raid, told AFP. The workers who failed to achieve their quota were physically harmed, deprived of sleep, or locked up inside their rooms. Such scam centers have proliferated across Southeast Asia since the coronavirus pandemic, with the United Nations estimating last August that hundreds of thousands of people from around the world have been tricked into the compounds. Quote, these scam compounds are quite different to other forms of trafficking that we have seen before, and there's a lot more brutality involved, Dr. Caitlin Wyndham from the anti-trafficking organization Blue Dragon said. Quote, tackling them is much more complicated because there are victims on both sides and because most scam centers are run by large and highly organized crime syndicates. The industry is also proving incredibly profitable, raking in unprecedented sums equivalent to billions of dollars, according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. Phil Robertson, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said that the frightening reality was that the Philippines was emerging as a scam center hub in Southeast Asia. Quote, this big bust shows that criminal syndicates are taking advantage of the country's prevailing corruption and lax law enforcement environment to create these hellholes of trafficking, exploitation, and rights abuses that use the internet to rake in dollars from unsuspecting cyber scam victims overseas, he said. President Ferdinand Marcos and his government need to get serious in investigating and taking down these scam centers in a systemic way. Man, that's new information. I kind of thought it was going to be funny for a second. I didn't read the article first. This is new to me. As I'm reading it to you, it's like, oh, this is, and then Jesus Christ. This is from yahoo.com. Here's the headline. Top U.S. cybersecurity agency hacked and forced to take some systems offline. Just goes to show you, nobody's perfect. None of this stuff is stable. Quantum computers, classical computers. There's only one thing that's perfect. There's only one thing that's immaculate. That's just literally perfection without distortion. And we know what that is. It's source. Everything else seems to have a little bit of distortion in it, which could equal certain things. And as you get down into the human dimension, dealing with these energy pulses representing binary code, and these pulses interfacing and interacting with each other to hide other pulses, which represent some secret information. It's a strange. This is why we cover this stuff. It's strange. Here's the article. A federal agency in charge of cybersecurity discovered it was hacked last month and was forced to take 2 key computer systems offline, an agency spokesperson and U.S. officials familiar with the incident told CNN. One of the U.S. cybersecurity and infrastructure security agencies affected systems runs a program that allows federal, state, and local officials to share cyber and physical security assessment tools, according to the U.S. officials briefed on the matter. The other holds information on security assessment of chemical facilities, the sources said. A CISA spokesperson said in a statement that there is no operational impact at this time from the incident and that the agency continues to upgrade and modernize our systems. Quote, this is a reminder that any organization can be affected by a cyber vulnerability, and having an incident response plan in place is a necessary component of resilience, the spokesperson said, adding that the impact from the hack was limited to 2 systems, which we immediately took offline. That's what they're telling us. The 2 systems run on older technology that was already sent to be replaced, sources told CNN. Part of the Department of Homeland Security, CISA investigates cyber intrusions at federal agencies and advises private critical infrastructure firms on how to bolster their security. It was not immediately clear who was behind the hack, but it occurred through vulnerabilities in popular virtual private networking software made by Utah-based IT firm Ivanti. For several weeks, CISA had urged federal agencies and private firms to update their software or take other defensive measures in response to widespread exploitation of Ivanti vulnerabilities by hackers. Among the hackers exploiting the flaws are a Chinese group focused on espionage, private researchers have previously told CNN. While there is some irony in it, even cybersecurity agencies or officials can be victims of hacking. After all, they rely on the same technology that others do. The U.S. top security diplomat Nate Fick said last year that his personal account on social media platform X was hacked, calling it part of the perils of the job. Oh my God. Well, let's just keep going. It's Earth. We just got to keep going. This is news.sky.com. Here's the headline. Indian YouTuber Elvish Yadav arrested for allegedly supplying snake venom as party drug. The sub-headline is Elvish Yadav, who has millions of followers online and is also a reality TV star, was detained for allegedly supplying snake venom to be used as a drug at raves. Look, I've seen a lot of the underground chemicals in my life. Been exposed to everything I saw. I love it. But I've seen at least everything that's available in Western culture. India, you guys have snake venom. You've been holding out on me this whole time. Why didn't you tell me about the snake venom at raves? You're gonna snuggle. You're gonna smuggle a snake in there? How do you hit that? Here's the article. Indian YouTuber Elvish Yadav has been arrested for allegedly supplying snake venom to be used as a recreational drug at raves. The influencer, who has 15 million YouTube subscribers, was detained under the Wildlife Act, according to Indian broadcaster NDTV. A party he was at in November was raided on the suspicion that snake venom was being used as a drug by partygoers. Police launched an investigation and questioned 5 people on suspicion of snake smuggling, who named Yadav as the alleged organizer of the parties and snake venom supplier. Yadav, who won an Indian version of Big Brother, Big Boss OTT, denied all the charges, NDTV reported. He said he would fully cooperate with the police. 9 snakes, including cobras, were recovered from the party, along with 20 milliliters of snake venom, the broadcaster said. Yadav has now been remanded to 14 days of judicial custody, 4 months after he was first questioned, the Times of India reported. India, my Indian family, my brothers, my sisters, my people, I love you. Why didn't you tell? What's going on with the snake venom? What happened? I'm telling you, I've learned several things today. They say you learn something new every day. Well, I've learned several things just on this episode. Last week, we were talking with John Kerwin. He was talking about chemtrails. It was a wild episode. He talked about a lot of things. I'm not a flat earther. I didn't really want to talk to him about that. Love the guy, but I just didn't want to go there because I like to keep things positive. Get the best information out of people when you're not arguing with them. So I just kind of skipped over that one. But chemtrails, he talked about that. People, I've been following that for like close to 30 years now. I've seen things. Everybody knows that they're finally admitting that it's real in the mainstream world, governmental agencies and others. And now there's a new law in Tennessee. This is from the Tennessean.com. Headline: Tennessee Senate passes bill based on chemtrails conspiracy theory. What do you know? Yeah, conspiracy theory. Anyways, here's the article. The Tennessee Senate has passed a bill targeting chemtrails. SB 2691/HB 2063, sponsored by Representative Monty Frintz, a Republican from Kingston, and Senator Steve Sutherland, a Republican from Morristown, passed it into the Senate on Monday. The bill has yet to advance in the House. The bill claims it is documented the federal government or other entities acting on the federal government's behalf or at the federal government's request may conduct geoengineering experiments by intentionally dispersing chemicals into the atmosphere, and those activities may occur within the state of Tennessee, according to the bill. The legislation would ban the practice in Tennessee. The intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compounds, substances, or apparatus within the borders of this state into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of the sunlight is prohibited, the bill reads. The bill is scheduled to go to the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee on Wednesday, which as of this recording was yesterday. So there you go. Whoa, they're putting it out there. There was a CIA agent or director of some agency that brought it up in the public sphere recently, maybe like a year or two ago. I don't know where to go next, people. I'm trying to not depress you. Like, some of this stuff is really awful as we're learning. I tried to pepper in a funny one, but then that turned out to be an abysmally bad situation. Not funny at all. I don't read these articles ahead of time, people. I promise. I'm just checking these out. I'm finding them, but then we're discovering these together. So hopefully this one's funny. It seemed funny, but as we've learned, they could take twists and turns. This is from Inquirer with an I, not like the National Enquirer. It's actually the Philadelphia Inquirer, Inquirer.com. Here's the headline. Bakery's vegan donuts were actually from Dunkin' Donuts, grocer says. And here's the subheadline. Vegan grocer Cindy's Snacks claims Long Island vegan and gluten-free bakery Savory Fig purported Dunkin' Donuts treats as their own and falsely sold them as allergy safe, then the internet found out. See, it's funny, but then you're messing with people's lives because people could actually die, the celiacs and people if they have a serious illness or some sort of thing. I'm gluten-free. I haven't eaten any gluten since 2012. Best choice I ever made in my life. One of them. Here's the article. Maybe America runs on Dunkin's, but vegans usually don't. A Long Island-based vegan market says it was sold donuts from a nearby bakery that falsely claimed its treats were homemade, vegan, and gluten-free. In reality, the market claims the donuts were repackaged Dunkin' Donuts. Now it's warning customers with allergies and dietary restrictions who may have mistakenly indulged. The ordeal has gone viral on social media, prompting vegan food and Long Island communities to weigh in. John Stengel and Indiana Cindy Kay opened their vegan market, Cindy's Snacks, in 2019. On weekends, they sell donuts they outsource from local vegan bakers, including a vendor called Savory Fig. It's unclear how long the market has worked with Savory Fig. Cindy's also works with at least 2 other vegan bakeries. On Sunday, Stengel posted a lengthy statement explaining and apologizing for what he called their nightmare come true, unknowingly selling gluten and animal products purported as vegan and gluten-free to customers. But they were just clearly Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know. Be careful out there, people. Gotta be careful. Okay. That was kind of funny, right? Not really. TheGuardian.com. You heard there's trouble in the country, Haiti. There was a man, goes by the name of Barbecue, and he was eating people. Here's the headline. Is the feared gang boss Barbecue now the most powerful man in Haiti? Article. Murals in the pauperized Haitian slums he rules liken him to the Argentinian guerrilla Che Guevara. In interviews, he poses as a God-fearing Caribbean Robin Hood and celebrates freedom fighters and agitators, including Fidel Castro, Thomas Sankara, and Malcolm X. Quote, I like Martin Luther King too, the Haitian gang boss Jimmy Cherzer told the New York journalist John Lee Anderson when they met last year. But he didn't like fighting with guns, and I fight with guns. The stunning gang-led insurrection against Haiti's government has catapulted Cherzer, a raffish, rifle-wielding 47-year-old mobster, into the international headlines, a place history suggests he enjoys. Over the past 5 years, the Haitian outlaw, who has emerged as the main spokesman for the gang uprising against Prime Minister Ariel Henry, has welcomed a succession of foreign reporters to his gangland domain, hoping to justify what he calls his noble, if bloody, crusade to defend his country's famished urban poor. Oh my God. Look, I saw the video of him eating another human. That's why they call him Barbecue. He's a cannibal. It's real. It's real, people. Sorry it's not on the mainstream news. They're not going to show this dude. I saw it with my own eyes, as millions of others did. That's why they call him Barbecue. You don't get a name like Barbecue if you're not eating people right. This dude ain't Chef Boyardee, okay? Can this one be funny? I don't know. This is from newsleader.com. Headline, Willow Springs man staged farm accident, paid someone to cut off his feet, authorities say. It's morbidly humorous. Here's the article. In Tory Thompson's 20 years of law enforcement, the Howell County's Sheriff's Office lieutenant has examined his share of bizarre incidents. When a man appeared to try and cash in on an insurance policy by staging a bloody farm equipment accident, it became the strangest case of his career. I bet. Would-be fraud and gruesome scenes are part and parcel of Thompson's job, but the combination of those circumstances is odd. The details made it odder. In November, the Howell County Sheriff's Office sent out a relatively vague press release to local media about a situation involving a man in Willow Springs who had lost his feet in an apparent staged incident with a brush hog, which is a rotary mower often attached to a tractor. Lost was a literal term, as the severed feet could not be found by responding medics and law enforcement officers. No other details were provided amid the active investigation. The case was recently closed. Thompson shared details with the news leader on Wednesday about the event that piqued much of the South Central Missouri County's curiosity. Quote, "It was a poorly executed plan," Thompson said. "I've never seen anything quite like it. When the call came in to emergency responders, it was described as involving a man whose feet were severed while brush hogging. But Thompson said it was quickly apparent the incident was staged. The feet were freshly severed. That much was true, according to Thompson, who said the man was in his 60s and a known paraplegic in his lower extremities. Authorities were immediately curious about the tourniquets on his legs and who put them there in the immediate aftermath of the alleged accident. The man, whom the news leader is not naming because he was not criminally charged, apparently had some help. Thompson said that a man from Florida made the trip to the small Ozarks town to cut off the man's legs with a hatchet, executing an alleged plan to commit insurance fraud. The wounds were not very convincing, the lieutenant said, with cuts that were much too clean to have been done by a brush hog. If it were a brush hog, it would have been a bloody, gory mess, Thompson said. I've seen those type of accidents before. This wasn't like that. As the investigation continued, Thompson said investigators determined the man was attempting to get money from an insurance claim. Since he never formally filed the false claim, Howell County prosecutors did not press charges. Annoyed by the resources it wasted on the situation, the sheriff's office considered pursuing criminal charges of filing a false police report, Thompson said, but the man was so severely injured from the incident that it would have been an arduous process to have him in jail. And where did his feet end up? Quote, a couple of days later, we got a call from a relative who found them in a bucket obscured by tires. So we went and got them, Thompson said. Oh, is that funny-ish? Oh, God, people. Oh, you know, people do weird stuff. NBCnews.com headline, dead Ohio man's roommate drove body to withdraw money from his bank account, police say. Here's a sub-headline. 2 suspects who lived with the man in Ashtabula, Ohio, were charged with gross abuse of a corpse. Yeah, that's gross. I don't think I need to read this article. I mean, I think you get it. They walked him down there, tried to get the money. Now, this is something I wanted people to be aware of. You got to be really careful with meat and parasites. So many people are living with parasites. So many people don't even realize they have them. I know someone that went on a cleanse and found out they had tapeworms. This was just a natural cleanse. There's a reason people in India get ivermectin once a year, the pill, the human Nobel Prize winning pill. Ivermectin because it's a dewormer. So this is from ksby.com. Here's the headline. Man's undercooked bacon habit. Who knew you could have an undercooked bacon habit? It's real. Man's undercooked bacon habit likely led to migraine causing tapeworm. So people with migraines, think about that. I didn't even know there was a migraine causing tapeworm. Are you a person that suffers from migraine issues? Maybe you have a tapeworm. Subheadline says a rare case of cysticercosis developed in a man whose habit of eating undercooked bacon likely caused tapeworms. I just said tapeworm. Here's the article. A 52-year-old man reported experiencing worsening headaches for over 4 months with no explanation. Researchers said the migraines were the result of tapeworms being caused by a man's consumption of undercooked bacon. For months, doctors tried to diagnose what exactly was causing these headaches. In a case report published by Florida health officials in the American Journal of Case Reports, the man stated his migraines occurred almost weekly, becoming increasingly severe and no longer were responsive to therapy. The report said he denied any new focal neurological deficits, changes in seizures, numbness, weakness, facial asymmetry, dysarthria, or dysphagia. He also denied visiting high-risk travel areas, with his only notable travel history being on a cruise to the Bahamas years prior. The report said that he lived at home with his wife and cat in a modern home and claimed to consume a regular diet, but admitted to a habit of eating lightly cooked, non-crispy bacon for most of his life. Oh man, it turns out that eating undercooked bacon was the likely culprit. Doctors diagnosed him with cysticercosis, which is a condition caused by infection from a pork tapeworm. He was then treated with anti-parasitic and anti-inflammatory medications. The report did not say if or when the man's symptoms subsided after treatment. Okay. Just meat. You have to be so careful. Vegetables. I mean, wash your vegetables. Meat has to be cooked. Sushi. I know someone that worked at one of the most expensive sushi restaurants in Portland. And part of his job was picking the parasites out of the sushi. The very, very expensive sushi. There were live parasites and you had to pick them out with chopsticks. Not lying to you. Here's some good news. Finally, livescience.com, PFAS, forever chemicals, to be officially removed from food packaging, FDA says, but it's in there now. New food packaging products sold in the U.S., such as takeout boxes and fast food wrappers, will no longer contain harmful forever chemicals known as PFAS. Oh, but they did the whole time before that. Thanks. Here's the headline. Manufacturers will no longer use harmful forever chemicals in food packaging products in the U.S., according to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. In a statement released February 28th, the agency declared that grease-proofing materials that contain per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, will not be used in new food packaging sold in the U.S. These include PFAS used in fast food wrappers, microwave popcorn bags, take-out boxes, and pet food bags. The FDA's announcement marks the completion of a voluntary phase-out of the materials by U.S. food packaging manufacturers. This action will eliminate the major source of dietary exposure to PFAS. Jim Jones, Deputy Commissioner for Human Foods at the FDA, said in an associated statement. Companies told the FDA that it could take up to 18 months to completely exhaust the market supply of these products following their final date of sale. However, most of the affected manufacturers phased out of the products faster than they had initially predicted, the agency noted. Quote, this FDA-led effort represents a positive step forward as we continue to reevaluate chemicals authorized for use with and in food, Jones said. It underscores an important milestone in the protection of U.S. consumers from potentially harmful food contact chemicals. Okay. And lastly, PFAS are a diverse group of synthetic chemicals that resist water, oil, heat, and stains, which is why they're historically used in a wide variety of products, including food packaging, household cleaners, and nonstick cookware. I only use cast iron cookware personally. PFASs are super durable chemicals that can take years to break down. Hence why they're often called forever chemicals. Okay, that's good news. But then, unfortunately, we've been using them this whole time, including the cookware people. Only use cast iron cookware, period, because it leaches iron. You need iron. You can't ruin the pan. There's nothing you could do to ruin a cast iron piece of cookware. You can always bring it back to life. And it just leaches iron. You need iron. Everything else leaches something else that you don't need, including these forever chemicals. Here's another interesting article. Leaning towards cool, but I've been burned on this episode already. So here we go. NBCnews.com. Headline: Neuralink live stream shows paralyzed person playing chess on laptop. Here's the article. Elon Musk's brain science startup Neuralink offered a peek Wednesday into how a quadriplegic person is using its brain implant to control a computer. Neuralink released a 9-minute video in which its first human patient, who is paralyzed below his shoulders, appears to move a cursor across a laptop screen with nothing but his thoughts. The video shows him playing chess and turning off the laptop's music. The patient, who had not been previously identified, said in Wednesday's video that his name was Nolan Arbaugh. He said that he's 29 years old and that he lost all movement and sensation in his arms and legs after a diving accident about 8 years ago. Arbaugh said he was satisfied as a patient so far after having previously relied on a mouth stick for certain tasks. No external devices or wires were visible in the video. Quote, "It's all being done with my brain. If y'all can see the cursor moving around the screen, that's all me. It's pretty cool, huh?" he said with a Neuralink employee by his side. The video makes Neuralink one of at least 3 companies to have released evidence of a functioning brain implant. Oh, really? The 2 others, BlackRock Neurotech and Synchron. Why haven't we heard of these? All of a sudden now there's BlackRock Neurotech and Synchron. This is why we do these episodes, people, so you get this information. Both have years-long head starts on Neuralink. Each of the 3 companies has a different approach, and other startups are rushing into the field. Neuralink released its video on Musk's X platform about 2 months after Musk announced that the company had implanted a device in a human for the first time. The video follows decades of research by physicians and neuroscientists in the field known as brain-computer interfaces, or BCI. Doctors implanted the first interface device in 2004. It was known as the Utah Array because of where it was invented, and a version of it now is used by BlackRock Neurotech. Neuralink has received both wide publicity and heavy scrutiny, in part because of Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, who is among the world's wealthiest people. The startup has been notable in part for how little information it has released to the public, with major announcements coming in brief statements on Musk's X account. Neuralink received approval from the FDA in May for its first in-human clinical study. Yes, we did cover that. And we knew this was happening. This is a progression. It's just going to get more intense. This is positive. This is all positive. This is from headphonesty.com. Headline: 11-year-old boy hears for the first time as scientists get closer to finding a cure for hearing loss. See, that's good. Here's the article. A once impossible cure for deafness is coming thanks to gene therapy. Assam Dam, an 11-year-old boy who was born deaf due to a genetic issue, has heard for the first time as a result of a gene therapy experiment headed by Acous Incorporated, part of Eli Lilly & Co. Hearing loss, especially those you're born with, has always been known as irreversible and used to only be temporarily assisted by hearing aids and cochlear implants. But the breakthrough in gene therapy has challenged this belief, offering hope for millions suffering from hearing loss. Imagine living in silence and then one day starting to hear the world around you. That's what happened to Assam Dam, an 11-year-old boy, thanks to gene therapy. Born unable to hear because of a gene that didn't work right, Assam lived in quiet for 11 years. Then, in October 2023, he received a special treatment that was about to turn his silent world into one filled with sounds. This treatment was developed by a company called Acous Incorporated, which again is a part of Eli Lilly & Co. They used this new type of therapy, which fixed the gene that caused his hearing loss. Just 4 weeks after getting this therapy, Assam started to hear. For the first time, he heard cars buzzing by, the sound of his dad's voice, and the snip of scissors during his haircut. Assam himself loves every new sound he discovers. Wow. This was even like a genetic thing. It wasn't like they figured out some external way to do it. This was genetic. Here's another positive one. See, I kind of changing the energy around as we creep towards the end here. ScienceFocus.com. Headline: Woman given a new 3D printed windpipe in a world first. Subheadline is: a cutting edge procedure in Korea has used other people's stem cells to design a tailor-made artificial windpipe. And here's the article. In a landmark moment for medicine, a 3D printed organ has successfully been transplanted into a patient for the first time ever. Now the patient in Korea is recovering with her new windpipe, which is partly made from another person's stem cells. A team of scientists, doctors, and engineers became the first people to perform a 3D printed windpipe transplant at Seoul St. Mary's Hospital in 2023. The patient is a female in her 50s who lost part of her windpipe, also known as a trachea, after having surgery to remove thyroid cancer. 3D printed bones and foods are just some of the future technology that have already seen some success, but organs are new territory. We were just talking about that. Fundamentally, the patient's new organ is built with cartilage and mucosal lining. The moist lining that's in your body cavities like lungs, and you know what it is. The scientists obtained nasal stem cells and cartilage cells from other patients to create these elements, cells which were discarded during a procedure to treat nasal congestion and from a nasal septum surgery. Interesting. But the 3D printed windpipe also contains polycaprolactone, PCL, for structural support, as well as bio-ink. Rather than the ink you might see in your printer at home, bio-ink carries the living cells needed to create living tissue in 3D bioprinting. Whoa! The PCL has an expiry date. However, being biodegradable, it is expected to last only 5 years. However, the scientists hope that during this time, the artificial organ will help the patient's body regenerate her own trachea. Wow. Wow. See, we talked about 3D printing organs, and here we are within the same episode. And let's do another positive one. Yay. This is from phys.org, phys.org. Headline: Good news for coral reef restoration efforts. Study finds full recovery of reef growth within 4 years. I remember this was a big deal in the 90s, and they did a lot of those artificial reef creations, but it turns out they're coming back. Let's just read a little bit about this. Here's the article. While the majority of the world's reefs are now under threat or even damaged, potentially beyond repair, a new study reported in the journal Current Biology on March 8th offers some encouraging news. Efforts to restore coral reefs not only increase coral cover, but they can also bring back important ecosystem functions, and surprisingly fast. Quote, we found that restored coral reefs can grow at the same speed as healthy coral reefs just 4 years after coral transplantation. Wow. This means that they provide lots of habitat for marine life and efficiently protect the adjacent island from wave energy and erosion. Well, that's cool. Humans are doing good. We're bringing back coral reefs that we probably had a big hand in destroying, but even if we didn't, we're helping nature. We're being a conduit for good in that situation. Okay, here's a weird one. TheExpress.com, as if all of these just haven't been freaking weird. TheExpress.com headline, gang steals 145 tons of chicken in bizarre heist of up to 55,000 birds. Here's the article. A gang of 30 thieves risk up to 20 years behind bars for executing one of the rarest major heists of all time after stealing an outrageous 133 tons of chicken. The chicken was stolen from a state-owned facility in Havana, Cuba, as the thieves made away with 1,660 boxes full of poultry. Then they tried to peddle the stolen goods on the streets in order to buy a variety of luxury items, including laptops, televisions, refrigerators, and air conditioners. Those are huge luxury items in Cuba. Although authorities haven't specified the exact date of the chicken theft, they suspect it occurred between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m. This timing coincided with detected temperature irregularities within the cold storage facility. Video surveillance footage captured trucks ferrying the stolen chicken offsite. Oh my God. Among those implicated in the crime are shift supervisors, IT personnel, security guards, and external individuals not directly affiliated with the company. It was an inside job. Okay. They're just a bunch of chicken stealers in Cuba. Look, they're probably hungry. Okay. Well, here's another situation where there were some hungry people, or in this situation, beautiful creatures. This is from NBCnews.com. Headline, rats are, quote, all high on marijuana stored in an infested New Orleans police evidence room. Oh my God. And here is the article. Rats have gone into the confiscated marijuana at the vermin-infested and decaying New Orleans Police Department headquarters, the city's top cop warned. Quote, I want you to see the tray of all the roaches. Well, what do you mean roaches? Major rodents on the floor, the cockroaches, the rats eating our marijuana. They're all high. Police Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick told the Criminal Justice Committee on Monday about the evidence room. The current department headquarters houses substandard facilities with broken air conditioners and elevators. Officers have nowhere to use a restroom, according to Kirkpatrick. Quote, we all know the facilities have been run down. Council member and Criminal Justice Committee Chair Oliver Thomas told NBC News affiliate WDSU. Last year, it was so hot that we had to close the buildings. Sometimes it's so cold that our officers and the rank at headquarters can't even occupy the building. The deplorable conditions date back to 2008, according to the WDSU investigative team. In the latest 2017 report, photos from inside the facility show snakes, rodents, possums, and possibly mold. Quote, the uncleanliness is off the charts. Okay, and they're all high. And then they're going to run over here. As we close out, we're in our final two articles here. These stoned rats are going to run right to this gentleman's house. TheGuardian.com headline, Pure Imagination. Tasmanian Premier vows to build world's largest chocolate fountain if reelected. Chocolate! We will all get chocolates. Here is the article. Dubai is home to the world's tallest skyscraper, the Burj Khalifa. Nepal boasts Mount Everest. Soon, if Jeremy Ratcliffe gets his way, Tasmania could be home to the world's largest chocolate fountain. The Tasmanian Premier on Sunday appeared to take inspiration from Willy Wonka by pitching himself to voters as the dreamer of dreams during a visit to the Cadbury Chocolate Factory, the largest in the Southern Hemisphere near Hobart. Channeling his inner Wonka, Ratcliffe said that if reelected, his Liberal government would deliver, quote, the greatest thing to happen to tourism since the MONA. What could rival the Museum of Old and New Art, the world's largest chocolate fountain, he says, which would rewrite the must-see list for every visitor that comes to Tasmania, the premier enthused. The new chocolate experience would include the chocolate fountain, a premier chocolate studio, a chocolate lab with make-your-own chocolate bars, a chocolate emporium, a cafe, a chocolate playground, and so much more. This guy just wants to be Wonka. Come on, but watch out for those stoner rats, okay? Okay? And look, people, this was a wild ride. This was just us this time. Where was Britt Anderson? Fortunately, she couldn't be here. This was just us this time. So we went on a wild ride together. But let's just close it with something beautiful. This is from PennLive.com. Headline, whale believed extinct from Atlantic for 200 plus years, seen off Massachusetts coast. Yes, there be whales on that coast. Here's the article. Talk about an incredibly rare event for those who caught a glimpse. A gray whale, thought to be extinct from the Atlantic for more than 200 years, was spotted recently off the Massachusetts coast. The super rare sighting took place on March 1st by the New England Aquarium's aerial survey team, 30 miles away from Nantucket, which is a small island off Cape Cod and is seen as a popular summertime tourist destination. As the aerial survey plane circled the area of the whale for 45 minutes, the gray mammal was seen to repeatedly dive and resurfaced and even appeared to feed, the aquarium said in a release. The team snapped pictures and reviewed them after, only to confirm that what they saw was indeed the extinct whale. Quote, my brain was trying to process what I was seeing because this animal was something that should not really exist in these waters, research technician Kate Lamley, who was in the survey plane, said in a statement. We were laughing because of how wild and exciting this was to see an animal that disappeared from the Atlantic hundreds of years ago. See, there's just so much going on this planet. Gray whales, which are large whales usually found in the North Pacific Ocean, can be distinguished from other whale species by having malted gray and white skin and their lack of a dorsal fin. They also have a dorsal hump and pronounced ridges. They are up to 49 feet long, weigh up to 90,000 pounds, and have one of the longest migration patterns of any mammal, USA Today reported. The species vanished from the Atlantic Ocean by the 18th century due to whaling, the aquarium said in a release. See, because before petroleum oil, the main fuel source was whale oil. But in the last 15 years, 5 whales have been observed in the Atlantic and Mediterranean waters, in addition to a sighting in December off the coast of Florida, the release said. But the aquarium said scientists think the gray whale that was spotted is the same one that was seen in Florida back in December. Scientists believe that the gray whales are appearing out of nowhere because of climate change. Quote, the Northwest Passage, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific through the Arctic Ocean in Canada, has regularly been ice-free in the summertime in recent years, partly due to global rising temperatures. And it's back. The gray whale, the woolly mammoth. What an episode, people. Mutated goats, super goats. The Montana King. You can sell goat semen. Trapped love centers. Barbecue. Super wolves that could save the world with cancer-fighting compounds. Armies on ecstasy, so they say. Read all about it in USA Today. And the quantum, oh my God, people. What an episode. What an episode. We did it together. This is what's going on Earth, right? At the moment, there's so much going on, but we had to cover it. I want to thank you for sticking it out for this super long one. This is a very rare Midnight on Earth episode. This is the first Beyond the News episode where I did not have a guest co-host. It may never happen again. It may not, but this is a special one. I'm glad you got to be here with me. You felt my vibe. We connected. So cool. Of course, go to Bryn Anderson's website, Vital Force Herbs. Get a bottle. Use the code. You have to try this stuff. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And of course, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you for being here with me, for staying on episode after episode and learning. I went back recently and listened to one of my original episodes because I recommended it to a friend. I listened to myself. I said, oh my God, I've grown so much as a podcast host, but I wouldn't have grown without your help. You listening, the numbers growing every single day. Over 185, it's like 189 countries at this point where there's people listening. I just want to thank you. It's so powerful. Thank you for that. We'll see you next week. Midnight on Earth.